a bit of introduction on where do we come from, what happened in the last few months, what is the impact on the EWCs right now, and then the recommendations as suggested by the European federations, to which Annika will give some comments, and then we will also have some practical examples from EWCs where we have people participating here in the webinar. Okay, where we come from. This is all very recent, so you should more or less have it in mind. It all started in December last year when we first heard about this new virus spreading in China, specifically in that million citizens city in Wuhan in China, which at that point maybe didn't worry too much people outside of China, although it was very clear from the start that there was a risk that this was going to spread, given the globalized world we live in. It was going to spread to other continents, other countries as well. And actually already 21st of January, we have the first recognized case of corona infection in Europe, and that was in France. And from there, it quickly spread to different people and different countries also in Europe, with, as we know, the very big outbreak, one of the biggest most impacted countries in the world still, Italy in February 2020. Italy was also the first country in Europe to go on a full lockdown on the 9th of March 2020, trying to keep control of what was happening. 11th of March, although already then the infections were spreading wildly, the World Health Organization, the WHO, finally declared that we are really talking about a pandemic, meaning a disease that is spreading all over the world, impacting every country in very serious ways. 17th of March, every single country in Europe actually had at least a few cases of corona, so it was really all over the continent. And as of April 2020, nearly all countries were on a sort of lockdown, light lockdown, full lockdown, with the intention of flattening the curve, as what the experts already always are referring to. Flattening the curve, meaning trying to make sure the impact on the hospitals mainly is not too hard, that there's not too many seriously ill cases, not too many people going to the hospital, and preferably also not so many going into intensive care, and also obviously trying to reduce the number of mortalities, which is rapidly increasing still today also. We are today, 25th of March, 25th of April is the last number that I was able to find. We are at 1,321,828 reported cases, infected people in Europe, and 122,740 mortalities. So it really is horrible situation we are facing. With some small exceptions with regard to the lockdown, Sweden seems to be a happy-go-lucky country with seemingly not too much impact. Annika, maybe you are not so happy that you're outside of Sweden, or maybe you are because of the situation, which is still a bit of a question mark whether they will really manage appropriately. But Sweden currently, I think, is the only country in Europe where there's no real lockdown, just some light measures, and life seems to go on as it was before, more or less. Actually, my son lives in Sweden, so I'm a bit concerned myself as well. On to the EWCs. What is the situation with EWCs with this COVID-19 pandemic? Well, obviously, many meetings have been cancelled, in the best case postponed to later this year, when hopefully the situation will return to normal, more or less. The same with training. We had a big order book of trainings for May, June this year. All of that has either been cancelled or postponed, or we are discussing transforming maybe the training also into some webinar approach. Where we have special negotiating bodies, these negotiations are again interrupted, delayed, maybe running on webinar systems as well, video conferencing. Many EWCs, I'm sure, already have had extraordinary meetings discussing the impact of the situation, trying to also have a common approach across Europe on the health aspect of the situation. Many online meetings, many video conferences happening already. with a risk, I would say, obviously, given the situation and the seriousness in several countries, a foldback of the attention of the EWC members on their local situation, on what's happening at national level. They're also engaging in dialogue with their local management, maybe themselves, worker representatives also being affected, being at home in either working from home at the best situation, but possibly also being in unemployment, forced into unemployment. We see that there are companies taking advantage of the situation somehow to make a lot of people redundant, or in the worst case, obviously, worker representatives themselves also being infected, being sick at home, being in a hospital, not being able to participate anymore at all in the dialogue, neither at local or at European level. So again, here with all this very confusing situation that we see, it was clear that there was a need for some guidelines, and the European federations very quickly now came up with a list of 7 recommendations, and I'm going to quickly take you through them and then let Annika comment and maybe give a UNI-specific perspective on the situation. So 7 recommendations. First of all, obviously, any meeting that was supposed to happen in this period until the lockdown situation comes to an end and people are allowed to travel again, any current planned meetings, regular meetings, ordinary meetings of your EWC or SE Works Council, or negotiating meetings should be postponed. So not just replaced by video conferencing, because you don't have the same kind of interaction. Preferably just find a new date later this year at which you can have the regular face-to-face meetings, because we don't want definitely to get this as an excuse also in the future that meetings can just as well be held by video conferencing, and there's no need to organize physical meetings anymore. Going too fast, there is a... seem to have lost a slide somehow. Sorry about that. Recommendation 3, request regular updates. Recommendation 2 is actually ask for an extraordinary meeting. I'm sorry about that. There seems to be a slide that's gone missing in between the technology change here. But the slide number 2, the recommendation number 2, Annika, if I remember well, is about requesting an extraordinary meeting actually now by video conferencing, but focusing mainly solely on the impact of the COVID-19 situation, both on the company, production, organization, etc., the social impact, but also on the health situation, so trying to discuss a common approach, but not without first negotiating a framework agreement also on how these video conferencing meetings will be organized, and insisting that it can only be exceptional. That's the real condition that you have to put forward, that again in the future management does not use this as an excuse to only have online meetings and no physical meetings anymore. So request an extraordinary meeting, but make sure you have good conditions set out in a side agreement to make sure that it's clear under what conditions and when you can use video conferencing instead of physical meetings. I think that's about the second recommendation, I think, Annika, right?
Yeah, you cover that, so it's perfect.
Okay, thank you. I will pick up the slide later on. Recommendation number 3, request for regular updates. Whether you have an extraordinary meeting or not, you should get involved in the whole discussion. Get information from your management on what measures are being taken to protect the health of your colleagues. What's the impact in number of people infected, being hospitalized, and so on? What is being done to mitigate the impact on the job? So a lot of aspects there to be discussed to make sure that you get the information and you see what's happening in different countries where your company is active. What measures are taken to help the workers and their families who are actually infected by this disease, who are sick? What is being done? How can the company help them? What measures are taken to mitigate the consequences on the business operations? Can your company continue to produce or deliver services, specifically, obviously, in the commerce sector and so on? You are still delivering the services. The food shops and so on are open, so The same with private security, probably. So there's different aspects there, definitely to be followed up closely. And also on the employment, economic, financial situation. So it's a whole aspect, actually, of what's happening in your company and how this is impacted by the COVID-19 situation. There's also a lot you can do yourselves. Always good advice to share information about what's happening in your countries, specifically now, looking at the COVID-19 impact, what measures are being taken by your government, what measures are being taken in dialogue between the employers and the trade unions, what measures are being taken by your company in your country, to be able to compare whether the same measures are being taken in Belgium, in Poland, in Italy, in the UK, and so on. And whether or not the trade unions, worker representatives have been involved at company level, at sectoral level, and so on. But there's a lot of information that you have yourselves as EWC members, which you should constantly share with each other. So you get the overview for your group, what's happening in the different companies. Fifth recommendation, a bit of a push bottom up. Urge your management to deal with the crisis on the basis of social dialogue. Social dialogue, which will happen mostly at the either even national level, regional level, or the sectoral level, but from the bottom up, from within your company, you can insist that also your management, through their organizations, follow the lines of social dialogue and collective bargaining to ensure proper measures are taken to protect employment, to ensure the health of the people and to help them in these difficult times. Negotiations at all levels, as I said, and effective measures, really, which are, from a social perspective, acceptable for us. Sixth recommendation, when we are through this period, I know we are talking about a second and a third wave possibly of infections, but we will come to an end. There also are a lot of positive news coming up on possible cures, on possible vaccines, etc. So we will come at some point where we are back to a relatively normal situation. At that point, it will be important to have, again, an extraordinary meeting to discuss what's going to happen now, what a face-to-face meeting to discuss how in the future you can make sure that operations continue, that jobs are not lost, that the approach, the organization within the company can maybe be modified so as to avoid future situations with pandemics, etc. So the forward-looking aspect there definitely needs to be discussed, not just at what's happening now, but look at the future organization of your company. Finally, seventh recommendation, which is always good advice in any way, in any situation within your European Works Council, stay in contact with your European trade union federations. But now, particularly if you don't manage to get proper information from your management, you don't get an agreement on video conferencing, you don't get an extraordinary meeting, if measures are taken which you clearly find insufficient, doesn't take the health of the employee seriously, or uses that as an excuse to make people redundant, if people are treated differently depending on the country that they are working in, if your representation rights are not respected, it must be clear that even in these circumstances, if the company wants to move into a restructuring, there are the rights of information, consultation, involvement to be respected also today. If that's not the fact, contact your European Federation so they can step in, they can coordinate, they can, from their side, maybe contact your central management. The coordinators that you may have can take the responsibility. Those are the 7 official recommendations. But maybe, Annika, from a uni perspective, you can add some extra information and maybe also tell us why and how you came to these 7 recommendations.
Okay, hi, thanks for your presentation. Yeah, for UNI Europa, it was we realized that we had to do something, and then we saw that at ETUIs were also starting the discussion on doing something for recommendation for the EWCs due to COVID. And for us, it's important, and it's a more added value if we do it together, as we cover experience and knowledge from all different industries. We have done it together with the Transport Workers Federation, ETF, EFAT, Food, Agriculture and Tourism, EPSO, the public service sector, Industrial, of course, and the Building and Woodworker, EFB, WW, and of course then UNI Europa. So yeah, for us it was important, and it is also like that in some EWC, more than one European Trade Union Federation are involved. For instance, I work quite close to Miriam at ETF to support and help the SMB of Amazon, as we both have affiliates with members working at Amazon. So yeah, but I think most that to bring together all this experience and this knowledge and do this together so that everybody has the same, I think that's it. Recommendation. It's a benefit for us. I will also mention, because what's a little bit different from UNI Europa, we have a little bit different approach on multinationals than the other ETUFs. We work with trade union alliance, so we have sometimes a little bit more global perspectives. And the trade union alliance brings together all trade unions covering the multinational sites, even on the global level. And they play an important role for collective bargaining, even at national level. The negotiation of minimum standards, it's also having an important role for solidarity and share information and support each other. And during this, when we took work with the recommendation for EWC and COVID, we also put up some recommendation for the Trade Union Alliance. Now we have briefly mentioned that they cover health and safety, third-party violence, temporary redundancy, telework, mental health, psychosocial risks, working hours, working time, and the last part is on post-crisis. And EWC is, of course, a very important part of the trade union alliances. So, yeah, so I don't think that's not much more uni specific perspective. Sorry for my dog, it's interfering. And I just you asked me after the situation in Sweden. What I can tell you is that I saw in the news today that Trump is some weird celebration on the Swedish, how it works in Sweden, is saying that even though they are not locked down, the Swedes are not running around. They are listening to their leaders, so they keep distance. But I don't know. I don't think that's the case, because I also know that a big problem that people are running around in bars and restaurants in Sweden. So I will also take the opportunity to mention, and that's also what Ben said, that it's important for us, for all ETUFs, to get the information of your best practices, your challenges, your problems, what works, what doesn't work, or so on. So in the recommendations, there are a contact list. So please, if you need to get in contact with us, need help, support, or share your information on best practices or whatever, so don't hesitate. We really would like to get in contact with you. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you want me to, because I know that we have Istvan, for instance, from Securitas. Are you still? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, and it's nice to be a part of this discussions and to listen in. I want to be very short, but when it comes to the situation in Sweden, that is something that we can talk about at a later stage. But in general, it's working because people listen to what the authorities have to say. But then, of course, we have our issues even on that level. When it comes to Securitas, I have basically we have postponed our meeting, which we have in October until further notice. I am following the recommendations which has been sent out, as Annika mentioned before. And then also we have started to engage to have discussions with the company about the COVID, because Securitas has number one priority, the health and safety and the well-being of the workers. So we have started to engage to have better, more productive discussions, because to my mind, it clearly shows when you have a decentralized organization, it is also in this case, in an extreme case like this, very dysfunctional. So this means that we have to work together. So we are now starting to have better communications on a national level, trying to engage people more, making sure that people get the right tools and get the right information about COVID, and also trying to adopt this on an operational level. All I can also say that our sector has been hit hard on the aviation, and also it will be the case in retail. But apart from that, we still do have the impact on that is, of course, has hit us in some sense, but apart from that, business is, I think, still thriving, but the companies dealing with the payments and companies going bankrupt. So that is on the business side. Now on the employee side, there needs to be improvement, and I can see now that the company is actually trying to, if they put that top priority, I can see now that they're trying to do this. So hopefully this will put everybody together in a better way. But it's not going to be done overnight. And we are just focusing now on the health and safety and on COVID. Everything else is on hold. We do have good discussions within my group on a weekly basis. Not everybody participates, but the majority does. And also we will try to continue to have better updates with the management as well. So that is really basically what we're doing. Of course, there are so many different factors in this, but I just wanted to say by concluding that the fact is that we have if you look on two sides of a coin, on one side you have the certainty aspect, and on the other side you have the uncertainty aspect. And I think what we have to do is to minimize the uncertainty aspects, but we don't have definite answers, we don't have a track record and so on. But I think by pulling everybody's knowledge, experience together on all levels, then and also by sharing it and trying to improve on communication, because we have brought up this time before, health and safety we have brought up before, then hopefully this will be a change in the future. So that is really what I can say so far.
Okay, thank you, Istvan. Tack. So I don't know, Bruno, should we see if there's someone else? I know that we have Marcus from Ikea, for instance, but maybe
first pick up on a few questions. I see that the chat is very active. Cyprian, can you tell us what's been going on there?
Yeah, we are having two questions from Albert. First one was a question: what to do when the management doesn't want to share any reports on information, I guess, regarding to COVID. I guess it happens quite often. And the second question is linked to the first one. It's what to do when the management treats COVID like a local issue, and therefore it's suggesting that EWC has nothing to do with COVID. So those are the two concrete questions. Yeah, and there was a add-on to the Brexit by Gianfranco, but probably everybody should read it by themselves. We won't be back to Brexit now. So let's now focus to COVID.
Yeah, I think the questions that you mentioned on what if the management doesn't provide any information, they refuse to share any information, and they consider everything to be transnational. I think this is not just, if I understand it well, probably not just under the COVID-19 situation, but just the general attitude of your management. So the fight continues, I would say. It's not just now in this particular situation. again, one of the recommendations is share information yourselves. So don't underestimate the source of information that you have in your own hands. And then you can confront, actually, be proactive with that and confront your management with the information that you found out. If you see that people are being treated differently in different countries, confront your management, ask them why it is so. Why is there no common position? What is their attitude from the central management side? There's no magic solution, obviously. EWCs where you have a very poor social dialogue, where you have a management that is not cooperative, it will obviously not change magically now in this situation. So it's just the same as in any other discussion that you have about whether it's national or transnational. Don't lean back, don't complain, but take it into your own hands and continue to request that your rights to be informed properly are respected, and make sure that internally you yourselves are well organized and you share the information that you have. Annika, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
No, that.
Any other questions?
May I add something to that, Bruno, if that's okay?
Of course.
Well, we had that discussion, and that was one of the points. But then I said to the company, look, I think if that's the case, if you're going to decide to have this on a national level, then you're definitely sending the wrong signals to the employees. But also, you have to remember that a lot of companies will be judged during COVID and what actions they're taking. So if you don't want to go down that process, then you are going to be judged by that. And I was very clear when I had my discussions, because I was, as you mentioned before, we are all confused, and most of us are very frustrated. But I think. If we want to voice our opinions, then this is the time to do it, and we have to be clear on that, and we are not going to back down, because if people talk about health and safety, which is the top priority for all of us, basically, then it's really important that the company should also take into account how they're going to be judged and what actions are being taken now, not only by the employees, but also by other companies as well. So it's important that they act responsibly, and that message I was very clear on. So that's the only advice I can share what I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe another thing that you could possibly do in such a case, and any discussion about is it transnational or national, again, if you're well organized internally from the bottom up in your local works councils, trade union representation that you have, keep insisting also there that central management needs to also respect the rights of the European Works Council. So push on every button that you have, I would say. If there are no other questions in the chat for the moment on the COVID-19 situation, Cyprian?
There are no other questions on COVID-19 situation, but there is an interesting addition to a Brexit discussion from Jan, that and I would like to encourage Jan to take the floor by himself, but it's up to you whether you want to spare some more time on Brexit.
Maybe we come back to Brexit at the end, finalize the thing on COVID-19 first, because Annika, I think we had another example from practice possibly to share from Ikea, if I'm right?
Yeah, and I maybe a little bit of surprise for Marcus. And I hope, Marcus, are you still here? No, maybe maybe then he has left. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Can you tell us what it was about? Or?
No, I just know that they have had regular meetings in the select committee and worked quite close. I don't know if, Henrik, are you still here? No, that's the coordinator of the Ikea EWC. So, no, sorry.
Can you maybe, while you are also now having the floor, can you maybe enlighten us if there is any, because it obviously covers many different sectors. You have commerce, you have private security, you have hairdressers, you have finance. all impact in different ways. How do you support? Is there a different approach depending on that sectors, or what's the strategy of UNI at the moment?
I don't know what's happening, but I continue. We don't have a common approach. We have these recommendations are cross-sectoral, but otherwise every sector is free to handle the EWC work in their own way. So there might be different approaches in different sectors. And I know that some sectors have been more active. I know in the finance sectors, there are a lot of EWC. That's also, so it has an impact on the work, because some sectors have more EWCs than others. We have in the finance, the graphical, the ICT, and the commerce sectors are the sectors where we have most EWCs.
Mm-hmm. I see in the chat feed that Tony Bergen can speak up for IKEA, and I would also, Gianfranco, maybe ask you to take the floor after Tony, because you have experience in many EWCs, many different other sectors also than UNI sectors, but you seem to have some particular experience with video conferencing and how management responds to that right now. So maybe first Tony and then Jan. Tony?
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry for being a little bit late, but there is a lot of this kind of meetings right now. So I hope you're all well. Thank you for having me. So shortly, I'm the coordinator for the Inter-IKEA Global and European Council, European Workers' Councils. And I think that both Inter-IKEA is the production company of IKEA, and IKEA, as you all know it, the stores are working quite the same at the moment. I know that they do have quite a lot of select committee meetings. They have a regular, quite regular meeting agendas. They do work together quite well. That's what I have been understanding, at least. And they also had their, at least the industrial part had their EBC meeting on Skype or Zoom or Teams or whatever. I don't remember. I was a part of it, but I think it was like Teams meeting, and it worked quite well. There is a lot of from what I understood, there is a couple of countries that are, of course, totally shut down at the moment, but they are starting to open a couple of warehouses right now, stores right now.
Mm-hmm.
So things are moving on. But from what I have heard, and I talked to Henrik some time ago, things are moving quite well with that company, and they do have a good relation, social relation at the moment. So they do talk to each other, and they do have quite a lot of meetings. IKEA hasn't engaged in all the different kinds of national support systems around Europe, and I think it's because of the riggings of the different systems. From what I understood, in some of the countries, the states demands that they get shares or ownership in the company if they receive benefits. And IKEA is not, of course, that interested in that. And they do have a lot of financial resources in that company. But I've seen some numbers from IKEA, and they are frightening. They have lost a hell of a lot of money, to be honest with you, really big amounts. This is the biggest, they will make the worst result that they have done since the company started this year. So it looks really bad for them, but they hope it will pick up in the end of the year. But I think we all hope that. So IKEA, I think everything works quite well, and they do have a good cooperation with the company right now. So that was that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. From a customer perspective, I have seen on the news that there are huge queues of people lining up to go to the shops again there where they are opening again right now. So I think it'll all turn out well in the end, hopefully. Sales will definitely pick up again. Gianfranco, can you maybe talk us through a bit your experience in different EWCs? You are in contact with several EWCs in different sectors. What is happening with video conferencing there?
Yep. Hello from Belgium. Don't be afraid. There is still chocolate. The beer is still there. It's waiting for you. if this lockdown doesn't take too many weeks, because we have to survive too. No, little joke. It's correct, Bruno. We follow about 120 EWCs at the international department. And I wanted to share a positive experience where we see that in some companies where they have been pushing to change physical meetings into video conferencing. We had meetings because they were urgent. We had a takeover from the company, even with Japanese joining in, which it was a disaster in communication. There was no feedback, and in all these cases, we got a message from management that this should be only for the lockdown period. So I think we will get out of these debates more. Yeah, it's strange to say thanks to COVID, and nobody likes this, but yeah. So this is an experience that I wanted to share. It's also a moment of opportunities for the EWC. We should not only focus on the problems, and I see with those EWCs that have been investing in their own network in between the workers' representatives, those are functioning well. But we all say, yes, we have to go back as soon as possible to the physical meetings. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe while you are still there as well, and any particular experiences, discussions you've had in EWCs on how they treat their employees or something? Is there any, not the video conferencing aspect, but the health aspect, support for people who are in telework, who are maybe themselves sick and so on?
Well, I'm speaking not only about those where me and my colleague are coordinator for one of the European federations. Health and safety is very high on the agenda. Most of these companies already have a good policy we have been discussing and working on. The difficulty that comes back always is how do you measure threats and health and problems in the European Union, where there's no let's say level playing field on the legislation level, because we measure differently and so on. But the positive thing is that those that already had a good policy now put it on top of the agenda, and those who saw health and safety as a soft subject now know that going to work and coming home safe and sound isn't a soft object, it's really hard stuff, and EWC is very competent to treat it. So my experience is now related. I'm saying this based on about 10 meetings I had in the last weeks online with EWCs, are quite positive in the way they treat this as it's a pandemic, so it's transnational. There's no discussion on that point. No, that's quite positive. And most companies want to start again, and they consult because they are afraid that workers are afraid to come to work. So they look for solutions, and as trade unions, I can say they need this now. So there's also a moment of opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this very positive message, actually. There are opportunities to be taken out of a crisis situation as well.
May I reflect on Jan?
Very happy to see that you are in Belgium and not stuck somewhere on the other side of the world, because I know, Jan, that you travel around the globe constantly. So fortunately, you're not stuck in Argentina or in Japan or something like that. You were able to.
I'm in the very beautiful city of Bruges,
where we have again fish swimming in the waters in Bruges, so in the canals. That's very nice. I see that more people want to share their experience. Rafik from Westrock, can you take the floor and tell us what's happening in your company, in your EWC?
Okay, thank you. So in terms of Westrock, we're a packaging company, so we're in the graphical sector. It's an American company. We have an established EWC. We actually have 2 EWCs. We were in the middle of renegotiating our agreement. We were due to have a meeting in Brussels towards the end of February. We've already had an initial meeting, and those meetings were postponed initially when the company issued a global travel ban. So we haven't progressed those, even though we know that's on the agenda. And just on the Brexit discussion that took earlier, as part of that renegotiation, we were combining our agreements and keeping the UK within the EWC structure. So the COVID-19 thing has really put a stop on a lot of those negotiations, which we felt were going to be concluded very soon. So in terms of the company itself, they have done a lot on the COVID-19 globally. They've issued a lot of best practice guidance. Whether all of the individual countries across Europe are following it, I'm not so sure. We are due to hold a meeting with the EWC Select Committee very soon via video conference. Video conference is a tool that we've used for many years anyway, so we're quite used to it as a tool to use when we want to avoid traveling. We travel as well, but it just avoids the complications. So we're going to get an update from the European Works Council reps as to how it's been implemented in the countries. But the message that came out from the American leadership team very early, even before any official government guidance was there, was they gave some heavy 40-50 page documents, guidance with pictures in terms of what they should be doing in workplaces and what they should be implementing. The business itself is very busy, but their finances are going to take a very heavy hit in terms of sales. So they're about to announce their sales second quarter results next week to the stock market, and they will show a very big decline overall in sales, and their cash flow is going to reduce as well because customers are extending their terms out. And just to put it in context, their normal annual sales are in the region of about 23 billion a year in terms of overall sales. Something that was just recently announced from the company in recognition for a lot of the companies that are working, they've just announced a goodwill payment, a one-off payment globally. So it's going to be equal payments across the board. The final figures haven't been finalized yet, but my understanding is it's going to be in the region of $1,000 that's going to be paid. So employees in America will receive $1,000, employees in Europe will receive the equivalent amount of $1,000, and the same will apply to employees in China. So in China, they will receive the equivalent amount of $1,000. So as a whole, it's been good. They have been very proactive. I think there's been some localized issues, but in general, it's been good. So that's an update from WestRock.
Thank you so much. Still checking in the chat feed. Cyprian, did you pick any other questions or people who want to bring their experience to the group?
I can give you a little bit of update on Teleperformance.
Thank you.
As I said, we are now in a very interesting relationships with the company. The bureau is making more and more video calls, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, depending on the situation. And I can only speak for Europe, of course. We are an international company with many sites in many countries. So sometimes things are not going well. From the financial part, we are stable. We have now, on a global level, I think 65 to 70% of our people working at home. As we are a call center company, theoretically, you could switch from one day to another to work at home. Practically not. You need the technology, you need the IT departments, you need the legal approval of each client to say, yes, you are allowed to move your people in a work at home environment. This was done, as far as we see it from the ECWC perspective, very quickly. I'm a technician myself, and I know the obstacles you have to overcome in order to move your people to work at home. Of course, companies make mistakes, and currently they fixing problems. So overall, it progresses, and we are stable. But we are reliant on every of the companies that make a deal with us and say, you're now our operator. So even as we have financial resource and we have claimed credit lines and so on, for us is also the question how the economics works. And if you're working for big companies, then you say, okay, some big companies like technology companies like Amazon or Microsoft or Apple will not fall. But you also serve for smaller companies, electric companies, and so on. So you have to see, okay, what happens if these companies collapse? Then they don't need technical support. They don't need customer support anymore. And then we will be maybe the first or the second wave of layoffs, depending on when it happens. So we're monitoring very closely. We have 2 weekly calls with the company, with the CFO. He's located in Paris. So we have close contacts. The company itself make a weekly update from the CEO via webcasts and covers all the action, what the company does. So for me, from right out of the workers and ECWC perspectives, we are moving, and many things that a colleague from some Securitas says applies also to us. The company, we are all growing together, and we are working together very closely. Of course, sometimes a company does not want to inform you about specific things, but our network inside the workers on the European level works. So we transfer this information and say, okay, we have heard that there is a problem in Spain. We go to the CFO and say, okay, we've heard there's a problem in Spain. We address this now to you. Please give us back information. And then we speak back to the Spanish colleague and say, okay, we've addressed it to the central management. Please observe the situation if there's changes or not. And so it's a constant exchange. Of course, every one of us want to meet physically again, because it are the most productive meetings. Mostly you make the deals not on the table, but on lunch, on dinner, in the evening events. So that is where the most information flows. So technology is good and those meetings are good, but of course we all crave for physical meetings, I think. That's for me.
Absolutely. For physical meetings, and also just to be able to be together with our friends, with our family again. I think we're all really craving for that. We're all, for several weeks now already, in many different countries, except for Sweden, in the lockdown. So not a very nice situation. Hopefully it won't continue for too long anymore. Thank you all for sharing so many different experiences. I think we should go to the end, more or less, of the webinar. It's